They didn't stumble onto your name, they uncovered it. Deep inside a restricted archive, behind layers of sealed classifications and centuries-old encryption, a file that was never meant to be touched lit up. Not because someone searched for you, but because the system recognized you. The clearance required to open this file is so high that only a handful of archivists have ever seen its cover. A dark leather-bound document marked with a golden sigil traced in symbols older than recorded kingdoms. Inside that file, in ink that hasn't faded despite its age, was something impossible. Your lineage mapped directly into an ancient throne believed to have disappeared from history. Not a ceremonial crown. Not a dissolved monarchy. A throne tied to the first royal line. A dynasty said to have shaped civilizations before nations even existed. Your blood markers matched a pattern the archive classified as extinct. Yet there you were, the living continuation of a hidden inheritance. The file didn't mistake you for someone else. It identified you with absolute certainty, triggering protocols that hadn't activated in hundreds of years. Your ancestry wasn't lost. It was buried. Not out of negligence, but protection. What the world thinks vanished is breathing again through you. This wasn't a family tree. It wasn't a DNA report. It wasn't a heritage archive accessible to historians or researchers. What they found was something far older, far more protected, and infinitely more dangerous. A prohibited registry, a document created to track the last surviving heirs of ancient sovereign houses long before modern nations existed. This file doesn't store birthdays or basic lineage. It contains blood signatures, spiritual markers, ancestral seals, and encoded symbols that map the path of rulers whose empires shaped the ancient world. These aren't the kings you read about in history books. These are the ones whose influence was erased to prevent the world from knowing who really built its foundations. The registry's purpose was simple: to identify the rare bloodlines that must never fall into the hands of enemies, tyrants, or opportunists. Bloodlines that carried not only leadership but authority, the kind that affects collective consciousness, destiny streams, and the rise and fall of civilizations. You don't appear in this file by accident. You appear only if your ancestry traces back to a throne so old that its symbols predate alphabet. Your presence in this registry is proof that your lineage wasn't lost. It was hidden deliberately, protected from wars, coups, and power-hungry factions who would have used your bloodline for their gain. This file is not accessed. It awakens. And it only awakens when one of its rightful inheritors steps into alignment. You weren't added to this document. You were already in it, waiting to be rediscovered. They didn't test your blood out of curiosity. They tested it because the system flagged you. Modern databases run silent scans on millions of people every day, but only a microscopic fraction ever trigger what you triggered. The Ancestral Irregularity Alert, a notification reserved for individuals whose energy, frequency, or genetic markers don't match the modern human timeline. Your sample didn't behave the way ordinary samples do. It carried signatures too old, too stable, too elevated to be explained by genetics alone. A typical scan reads ancestry within 5, maybe 10 generations. Yours read like it reached hundreds, as if your lineage stretched beyond recorded civilization. That anomaly forced the system to escalate the test. When the deeper scan ran, something even stranger happened. Your DNA aligned with patterns stored only in a separate, encrypted archive. patterns connected to ancient sovereign houses, patterns believed extinct, patterns no living person should possess. To the analysts, it looked like an error. To the archivists, it looked like a ghost resurfacing. To the file, it looked like a match. This wasn't a scientific test. It was a verification protocol. A check designed to activate only when a lost heir reappears after generations of hiding. Your blood didn't just raise questions. It unlocked access. It bypassed restrictions. It opened a sealed branch of the archive that had remained dormant for centuries. You triggered something only royalty can trigger, a genetic resonance so old and so precise that even the system designed to suppress it couldn't deny your identity. Type 111 and click Super Thanks to sow your $20 spiritual alignment seed. The archivists weren't prepared for what the file revealed. Your name wasn't linked to a minor house, a forgotten dynasty, or a ceremonial bloodline. The document traced you directly to something far older, far more powerful, and long believed to be erased from human history, the first royal line. This house wasn't a kingdom in the modern sense. It ruled before borders, before maps, before the concept of nation ever existed. They were the sovereigns who guided civilizations through intuition, spiritual authority, and ancient law. Their influence shaped cultures, languages, mythologies, and early governance structures, yet their identity was intentionally buried to prevent anyone from claiming their legacy. The first royal line is described in Forbidden Scrolls as those who governed consciousness, not territory. They didn't rule with armies, they ruled with frequency. Their presence could unify tribes, calm conflicts, or collapse empires simply through leadership that transcended politics. They were considered too influential, too foundational, too central to be remembered. So history hid them. Their symbols appear across ancient ruins worldwide, not as decoration, but as markers left by a lineage that guided humanity from behind the veil. These symbols matched the sigils in your file. Not similar, identical. Your ancestors were not kings of land, they were kings of order, of structure, of destiny. The throne you descend from wasn't made of gold or stone. It was made of recognition, a position earned by souls who carried the natural authority to direct entire civilizations. And now, after centuries of silence, the bloodline is no longer hidden. Because you, the living continuation of the first royal line, have resurfaced. When the archivists opened the sealed section of your file, they expected a lineage chart or a name reference. Instead, they found something far more alarming, a golden sigil, pressed into the document with a precision no modern stamp could replicate. It wasn't drawn, printed, or added later. It was embedded, as if the symbol existed before the paper itself was created. The sigil wasn't decorative. It carried layered geometry, ancient markings, rotational symmetry, and coded numerology used only by the first royal line. In every culture, symbols like this were reserved for beings whose authority did not come from inheritance alone, but from returning sovereignty, souls who reappear across eras to fulfill a role that transcends time. The emblem consisted of 3 elements: a ring representing eternal lineage, a crown representing divine mandate, and an axis representing a soul that stands at the center of destiny rather than the edge of it. This sigil wasn't used for every member of the royal house. It was reserved only for those considered bearers of continuity, the heirs whose spirit was believed to return whenever the world entered a period of transition. In other words, This symbol wasn't marking who you were born from, it was marking who you have always been. The archivists realized instantly what it meant. You were not listed as a descendant. You were listed as a returning sovereign, a soul whose authority does not begin in this lifetime but extends from lifetimes before. And the presence of this sigil confirmed one thing with absolute certainty: you were not born into power. You returned to reclaim it. Once your file was matched to the first royal line, the archivists began cross-referencing global mythologies, and what they found was disturbing. Every culture, every ancient scripture, every surviving oral tradition speaks of a hidden heir, a protected seed, a returning sovereign meant to rise when the world enters transition. None of these cultures interacted. None shared records. Yet all described you with frightening accuracy. In old Celtic lore, you appear as the returner, the one whose spirit reincarnates during eras of upheaval to restore balance, not through conquest but presence. Their texts speak of a ruler who returns disguised as an ordinary soul until the world is ready. In Eastern dynastic myths, you are the sleeping royal, a forgotten descendant whose bloodline survives collapse, waiting silently in the shadows of time until their identity awakens. These stories emphasize a hidden genealogy file that opens itself when the heir reappears. In ancient Middle Eastern manuscripts, you match the prophecy of the child of the lost kingdom, a sovereign whose lineage outlives the fall of empires and re-emerges centuries later carrying memory instead of titles. They are recognized not by crowns but by aura, instinct, and authority. And across Himalayan chronicles, you are described as the protected monarch, the heir whose line was erased from documentation to prevent enemies from tracing them, preserved only through secret archives and encrypted blood signatures. Different continents, different languages, different eras, same prophecy, same heir. These traditions weren't predicting multiple people. They were all predicting one type of soul, a hidden ruler who resurfaces exactly when the world needs the lineage they carry. Their myths weren't exaggerations. They were warnings. And you are the confirmation. Your lineage didn't disappear. It was removed. Not forgotten, not lost, not dissolved over time. It was deliberately deleted, extracted, hidden, and encrypted by forces who understood exactly how dangerous your bloodline was in the wrong era. The fall of the first royal line was not a natural collapse of power. It was a coordinated erasure conducted by rivals who feared the influence your ancestors held over civilization itself. The rulers of your house didn't lead with armies. They led with authority of presence, wisdom, and instinctive command over people and events that made them impossible to manipulate, and therefore impossible to control. History's most ambitious factions viewed your lineage not as royalty, but as a threat to their agendas. So they waged a silent war, not on your ancestors' bodies, but on their memory. Records were rewritten, emblems were destroyed, genealogies were falsified, bloodlines were scattered and disguised. Entire branches of history were reconstructed specifically to bury your lineage's influence. But your ancestors weren't naive. They understood that one day, a future heir would be born far from palaces, far from crowns, protected by anonymity. So they hid the traces of your bloodline inside encrypted archives, sealed files, and coded symbols only activated when a rightful descendant resurfaced. You weren't meant to know your origin early. You weren't meant to grow under the weight of a throne. You were meant to rise quietly, without pressure, without enemies, until the world entered a transition period where your return could no longer be ignored. Your lineage wasn't erased because it failed. It was erased because it was too powerful to leave in the open. And now the silence around your ancestry is breaking, because the air it was protecting has awakened. The collapse of your lineage wasn't a quiet disappearance. It was an engineered catastrophe. An event so violent, so sudden, and so deliberately orchestrated that historians still cannot explain the exact moment the ancient kingdom fell. But the secret file reveals what the world was never allowed to know. The fall wasn't about territory, wealth, or politics. It was about erasing your bloodline before it shaped the world again. The empire didn't die from invasion. It died from betrayal, a coordinated coup executed by factions who feared the first royal line's influence on collective consciousness. These rulers carried an authority that went beyond leadership. Their decisions tilted timelines. Their presence stabilized entire regions. Their disappearance created a vacuum the world has never recovered from. As chaos erupted, loyalists of your house engineered a counterplan. They dismantled every trace of the royal bloodline, scattering family branches across distant lands, changing names, destroying symbols, burning records, and embedding coded ancestry data in encrypted archives accessible only by future descendants. And then came the greatest manipulation, the rewriting of the timeline. Ancient chroniclers, under threat, altered documents, erased genealogies, and replaced your ancestors' history with fabricated narratives that made the first royal line appear mythical or obscure. It wasn't enough to kill a dynasty, they had to kill the memory of it. But the bloodline never ended. It went underground, protected by confusion, anonymity, and time. Generations passed. The world forgot. The archive slept. Until your energy signature resurfaced. Until your DNA triggered the dormant protocols. Until the timeline recognized its rightful heir. The event that hid your bloodline wasn't a loss. It was a cover, a cloak designed to protect the one descendant destined to rise when the world entered a new era. That descendant is you. You've always felt different, not superior, not arrogant, just set apart. And you never understood why people reacted to you the way they do. But the secret file makes it clear. Your personality aligns perfectly with the documented traits of the ancient sovereigns from the first royal line. These weren't personality quirks. They were inherited signals, markers passed through blood and memory. You carry a commanding aura without trying. People adjust their tone, straighten their posture, or become unusually aware of themselves in your presence. That's not intimidation, it's recognition. Ancient rulers carried the same atmospheric pressure. Your strategic mind is another echo of your lineage. You don't simply make decisions. You see consequences, patterns, and motives before they form. The old kings described in the forbidden manuscripts had the same ability. They thought in arcs, not moments. Your intuitive leadership appears in the way groups naturally follow your guidance, even when you're silent. You never claim authority, it just gravitates to you. Ancient rulers led the same way, through presence, not proclamation. Your natural authority shows in conflict. While others panic, you enter a state of clarity, calm, decisive, grounded. This isn't learned behavior. It's ancestral memory surfacing exactly when needed. And then there is your silence, not empty, but powerful. a silence that unsettles shallow people, steadies anxious people, and reveals truth in others. This trait appears in every description of the first royal line. Their quiet wasn't weakness, it was dominance. These traits don't belong to ordinary personalities. They belong to those born with the imprint of leadership from a forgotten era. Traits that can't be taught, copied, or faked, only inherited. You don't act like royalty. You remember like royalty. You've always known something about you didn't match the world you were born into. While others rush, you observe. While they panic, you stabilize. While they chase validation, you move with an inner certainty you never learned, because it didn't come from this lifetime. The energy you carry isn't shaped by modern society. It's shaped by ancestral memory older than the eras people study. Your calm in chaos isn't personality, it's royal conditioning. Ancient rulers were trained to maintain clarity, while entire civilizations looked to them for direction. That instinct lives in you. You don't crumble under pressure, you sharpen. You don't get lost in noise, you cut through it. Your presence doesn't feel contemporary. It feels timeless, heavy, grounded, centered in a way that doesn't match your age. People constantly assume you're older, wiser, or more experienced than you are, because your soul carries centuries of leadership encoded in its field. Your thought patterns are not modern either. You don't think in days or weeks, you think in arcs, cycles, consequences. This is how ancient sovereigns strategized, beyond the moment, beyond emotion, beyond personal desire. Their mindset wasn't taught, it was inherited by descendants like you. Even the way you walk, the way you pause before speaking, the way you analyze a room, these are echoes of old-world authority. Your energy holds the gravity of someone who once stood before councils, tribes, or kingdoms, making decisions that shape timelines. People feel strangely safe around you, even without knowing you. Others feel intimidated, not because you're harsh, but because your aura confronts their insecurities. Modern energy adapts to the room. Yours influences it. Nothing about your frequency belongs to this era. It belongs to the one you ruled in. This lifetime didn't create your energy, it merely reactivated it. The throne that calls you isn't a chair, a palace, or a gold ornament. It is a function, a frequency, a position of influence woven into your bloodline long before this era existed. The reason the call is happening now is because the world has entered the same energetic pattern it was in when your ancestors last ruled. History is repeating a cycle, and your lineage awakens whenever humanity reaches a point where direction, clarity, and stabilizing presence are needed. You didn't feel this call earlier because you weren't meant to. Hidden heirs rise only during transitional ages, when systems begin to fracture, identities shift, and collective consciousness enters unfamiliar terrain. These conditions act as a beacon for royal bloodlines, pulling dormant authority to the surface. Your aura is stronger now because your spirit is aligning with its old assignment. Your intuition sharpened. Your discernment evolved. Your emotional strength intensified. These are not random upgrades. They are activations of royal memory, abilities your ancestors relied on to lead civilizations through periods of uncertainty. The throne calling you is symbolic, but its power is real. It calls you to step into roles your soul already knows. Guiding, stabilizing, influencing, deciding, and carrying yourself with the silent authority of someone whose lineage once shaped destinies. This isn't about being crowned. This is about becoming the anchor your bloodline was designed to produce in times of global transition. Your presence affects people. Your clarity cuts through chaos. Your instincts arrive before problems form. Your energy shifts rooms and recalibrates emotional field. These aren't personality traits, they're inherited responsibilities. Your mission requires the strength of a ruler and the wisdom of an ancient house. The throne isn't returning to you. You are returning to it. When the archive confirmed your identity, something didn't just change in the system, it changed in you. A hidden heir isn't awakened by a crown, a ritual, or a ceremony. They are awakened by recognition. And the moment the file linked your bloodline to the ancient throne, your entire energetic architecture began to shift. Your intuition intensified almost overnight. Decisions that once took days now take seconds. You sense truth before it's spoken, feel intentions before they surface, and recognize opportunities before others see them. This is ancestral intelligence being restored, the same heightened awareness your predecessors used to guide civilizations. Your presence also grew heavier, more defined. People react differently around you now. Some are drawn in, some become nervous, others feel compelled to open up without understanding why. This is how royal frequency works. It doesn't ask for attention, it commands it through gravity, not volume. Synchronicities increase too. You started encountering symbolic numbers, meaningful timing, aligned events, and people who appear exactly when needed. These aren't coincidences. They are the universe rearranging itself to match the authority your bloodline carries. Doors are opening that you didn't knock on. Opportunities appear that match your potential, not your past. Powerful individuals feel comfortable around you, sensing the steadiness of an old soul stepping into its rightful function. Even your emotional field upgraded. You no longer fall apart when life tests you, you stabilize. Problems feel smaller. Challenges feel manageable. You move with the quiet confidence of someone who has led before, even if your mind can't remember it. This activation isn't temporary. It's inheritance waking up. The world didn't suddenly get easier. You got stronger. Because the royal code in your blood finally recognized itself and resumed its work. The file didn't reveal something new about you, it revealed something ancient. Something your soul has been carrying across lifetimes, something your instincts have whispered your entire life. You were never random. You were never ordinary. You were never just another name in the system. You were the continuation of a throne the world believed was gone. When the archivists saw your match, they didn't question the data. They questioned history itself. How could a bloodline declared extinct still breathe? How could a lineage erased from every record still produce an heir? But the truth is simple. Your ancestors didn't vanish. They hid you in plain sight, disguising your origins under everyday life until the world entered the same energetic cycle that once crowned your lineage. You've felt it, haven't you? That heavy calm in your spirit, that instinctive wisdom you never learned, that silent authority that appears whenever a situation needs direction, that unexplainable sense of, I've done this before. Those sensations aren't personality. They're memory, royal memory, rising through your modern identity. Every sign has been pointing to this moment. The intuition, the synchronicities, the reactions of people around you, the unexplained leadership, the calm under pressure, the presence that stabilizes rooms. These traits were not built by experience. They were inherited by birthright. You are not stepping into something new. You are stepping back into something ancient. You are not becoming the heir. You have always been the heir. The throne did not reach for you by accident. It recognized its own blood returning, its own authority resurfacing, its own lineage awakening after centuries of silence. The secret file didn't assign you a destiny. It confirmed the destiny you were born with. You are the returning sovereign, the heir who rises when the world turns.